Hello, Ederson Oliveira here. Today we'll be talking about delegates in C#. But before we bring this to coding, let's see what delegate means in real life. What is a delegate? A delegate is, according to Oxford Languages, a person who sent or authorized to represent others. As a verb, it is the act of entrusting a task or responsibility to another person. For example, delegate in real life. Let's say that we have the country, the Solo Islands. The Solo Island needs to send someone, needs to speak at the United Nations conference. But the Solo Island, well, it's an island. It cannot speak by itself. It sends a delegate. A delegate, which is a person that represents the island's interests towards United Nations. Now, delegates, when it comes to C#, it is a type that represents references to methods with a particular parameter list and return type. A bit complex, isn't it? This comes from Microsoft Docs. Let's have a look at how this really looks like. Delegate in C#, we have our method. There are other methods that may want to call this method, but for some reason, and this will become clear as we go through the example, for some reason, the other methods, they don't want to reach to these methods directly. We can use a delegate to talk to the methods through the delegate. So the delegate becomes the type that the other methods talk to be able to reach the final methods. You're going to understand why it is interesting to have a delegate in the middle. I'll be using the movie class to demonstrate the use of delegates. So I'm going to go back here to program, and I'm going to create a method just to populate a list of movies. It's going to be a static method. The return type will be a list of movies. And to use a list, I have to declare the namespace system.collections.generic. And I'm going to call it populate movies. I'm going to start by creating a list of movies here. And I will start to add movies.add a new movie. And I have the movie information already pre-created. Here's the first one, and I'll add another 9 movies. So we have in total 10 movies at the end of this method. And we're going to return this list as a return value from this method. Return movies. Okay, so we have the population of our movies. What can I do with this? Well, I can declare here in the main, I can declare a list of movies, all movies. Instead of creating a new list, I'm going to call populate movies and have this new list creating and populating all movies. In the main, I can do whatever I want with this list. I can filter it, I can print it out to the console. For example, let's print them out. So let's do a for each movie in all movies. Yes, let's do that. And let's just print it out. Let's do a console write line, and we're going to print the movie.toString. Let's see if it's working. It's working, printing all movies here. Okay, all good. Now, Ederson, why did you show all of that? There's nothing related to delegates here. Well, first I'm going to show a very useless way of using delegates. That's what most content out there will tell you. So for example, I can declare inside of the program class a delegate that has the same return type and arguments of populate movies. The return type of the method is list of movie, and the arguments, there are no arguments. I'm going to declare a delegate. The return type is a list of movie. I can call it, let's say, populate movies via delegate. And then there are no arguments here. First thing, to create a delegate, it must match the return type of the methods and the arguments. The argument names, they don't have necessarily to be the same, but they have to have the same type. With that, what we can do inside of the main, I can declare a delegate. This becomes a type, populate movies via delegates. It's like a type. I'm going to call this populate equals to new data type. This is the data type. But in the constructor arguments, I need to indicate which method I want to connect with this delegate. In our case, I want to connect populate movies. So I'm going to pass populate movies as the parameter, the argument for this constructor. So when we do this, we are linking this element to this method. And then instead of calling the method directly, we can call populate like this. So by doing that, populate becomes the delegate that will answer on behalf of this method. Let's give it a try. Still works as expected. We are used to having objects and variables holding values. But in this case, populate is not holding a value, it's holding a pointer to a method. And when we call it, we're calling the method that has been linked back to it. Now, the obvious question here is, why go through this trouble? Why not just call populate movies directly, which is what we have been doing before? Why do all of this? Great question, and that's why this is not the best use of delegates, but this is a very common example and a way to describe it. I want to shift the context here and demonstrate a true benefit of using delegates. For that, I'm gonna undo this delegate here because this is not the most useful one, and we're gonna go back to calling populate movies directly. For the sake of example, let's say that we want to filter the movies based on displaying movies that are appropriate for kids. Another one of movies that have been released in the last decade. In the last one, let's say that we want to show movies that had box office above $1 billion. Okay, so we want to display 3 lists. Seems quite straightforward. We're gonna have to loop through the list and print the corresponding ones. So I'm gonna start by writing a little header here, and I'm gonna say good for kids. Down here, I'm gonna loop through the movies, and I'm gonna check if the movie is appropriate. It's rated for kids, and rated for kids means PG, so the classification should be equal to PG. If movie.classification is equal to PG, then print it. And toString is printing the movie details here. We're missing the $sign right here. There we go. We have 2 movies that are appropriate for kids. Now, I want to give a space here at the bottom so that we can skip a line when you go for the next one. Now, the next one will be similar to this. I'm gonna reuse this code, and in this case, released in the last decade. To check, we're gonna say .year is greater than or equal to date time .now, which returns today's date, .year, which returns current year, and I'm gonna say -10. This way, we will only be printing movies that have been created in the last decade. Give this a try as well. There we go. The only one was Spider-Man. Okay, last one, box office above 1 billion. So we're gonna copy this code again. I'm just gonna say the message, and we're gonna check here, box office greater than or equal to 1,000, because the values here, this value is $353 million. So we are reducing the thousands here, and this means millions. So to be a billion, it means 1,000 millions. Let's have a look. Final one, and there we have Spider-Man and Jurassic Park. They both made more than $1 billion in box office. Do you agree with me that there is a level of repetition here? This block looks very much like this one, which looks very much like this one, with differences. For example, the title is different, the condition is different, but the general structure is the same. So is there a way that we can move this, we can reuse this code without repeating it over and over again? Yes, there is. And we're gonna use delegates to help us with that. There are 2 elements here that change from block to block, the title and the condition. The title is a simple value, so we can easily recognize that this could be a parameter of a method. However, what can we do about this condition here? Well, we can turn this condition into a separate method, and we can have those methods being passed along as parameters of the display of each one of those blocks. This is what I mean. Let's turn each one of those conditions to a separate method. First of all, let's do this for the classification. I'm going to create another method here, a static method, which will return a Boolean, and I'm going to say is good for kids. This method will receive a movie. I'm going to declare a local Boolean called confirm, and I'm going to start this variable with a false. Then I'm going to say if movie.classification is equal to PG, then I'm going to have confirm equals to true, and I'm going to return confirm. If classification is different from PG, confirm will stay as false, and it's going to return, the method will return false. If classification is equal to PG, confirm will return true, and is good for kids will return true. With this method, we can replace this test here. We can say, instead of testing it here, I can call the method. I can say, is good for kids, and I can send the movie from the loop to check there, and if it is, write the movie information. I'm going to repeat the same for the other ones. The other one will be a similar method. I'm going to copy this one here, but I'm going to call it was released in last decade. I'm going to keep the same variable, but now instead of checking classification, I'm going to check the year. I'm going to repeat this logic here. Year greater than or equal to this. We're going to do the same with this one. We can remove the condition from here and call the method with the argument of the current movie. Last one, we will replace this one here. I'm going to use the same structure here, and I'm going to call it was box office over 1 billion, box office greater than or equal to 1000, which represents 1 billion. I'm going to call the method instead of comparing there, and I'm going to pass the current movie. Okay, so we have replaced the three conditions with three different methods. But how does that get us to be able to reuse this in a more efficient way? Because now, look at this. All three methods, they look very similar in the sense that their signature is the same. They return the same type, and they expect the same type of argument as well. Movie, movie, and movie. Boolean, Boolean, and Boolean. With that in mind, we can now create a delegate that will represent each one of those three methods towards a new method that we're going to create to be able to reuse this code here. Before I show you, let's just try to see if everything is still working fine. All good here. The three blocks are still working fine now that we have replaced each condition with a separate method. Let's declare a new method that will encapsulate the process of printing out a block. So I'm going to declare a static method here. There's no return type, it's just displaying. And I'm going to call it display movies. For now, I'm going to keep it without arguments, but we have arguments here. So I'm just going to copy one of those blocks and see which information should become part of the arguments of this method. For example, the title here at the top. So I'm going to create a string here called title, and this title will be printed right here. Next one, we have the list of movies. I'm gonna say list of movies, of movie. I'm gonna call it movies. This will take place of this guy here. The other one is the method, because I need to be able to change the method to one of those three. It should be either this, this, or this one. I cannot make it fixed like this. And that's where the delegate comes, because we can use the delegate here and send the appropriate methods according to what we want to filter at this point. For this to happen, we have to start by declaring a delegate that has the format of those methods. And by format, I mean the signature. It must return a Boolean, and it must have an argument of type movie. I'm going to call this filter movies, and we need to have the movie as the argument. The name of the argument doesn't matter as long as the type is a movie. So this is a delegate. Now with this delegate, we can use this as a new type that we're creating. And we can say that this becomes another argument for display movies. I can say filter movies, which is a type. I'm going to call this just filter. This is the type. This is the delegate name. And this is the name that we're giving that we can refer to it inside of the method. So now look at this. We can use future right here. The method became one of the arguments of this method, of display movies method. How we call this? Well, let's look at that here. Each one of those blocks you're going to replace by calling display movies. The first argument is the title. The second argument is the movies list, all movies. And the third one is the future. So if I want the Good for Kids future, I'm going to send this method name here. The method itself became part of the arguments. I'm going to do the same for the other ones, of course, changing the title. All movies is still the second argument, and the method that we send for this one was released in last decade. The last one is the box office. So here is the title. All movies is the list of movies. That's fine, we leave it there. And the method will change as well. Was box office over 1 billion. And now look at this. We have reused the block of code and we have made the methods as part of the arguments of display movies. And with that, we can actually get rid of all of this. Look at the level of reusage that we are having here. Let's give it a try. See if it's still working. There we go. The same filtering worked the same way as it was before, but now with way less code. In summary, one of the benefits of Delegate is that you can have methods as arguments to other methods. Like here, we have 3 different methods. One delegate is representing each one of them inside of this method. Future can become is good for kids, was released in last decade, or was box office over 1 billion. Depending on which one we sent, the corresponding future will be applied here, and we have reused this code. I hope this makes sense to you. If not, leave your question below. I can go into more details if you need. This is not a very easy topic. This is not a very straightforward topic. And by the way, this is not the only usage of delegates. Delegates are also used for events, but this is a topic for another video. If you like this video, if you learned something from this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much and bye for now.